Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix begins later this week. Red Bull seem concerned about the potential fightback coming into full order this time around for Mercedes. Hamilton reckons that at least by Silverstone, he's expecting them to be able to challenge at the front. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for 2,000 subs as well. Missed a few videos the last couple of days. Been busy in the afternoon. We're back in business today, baby, and going forward for this weekend. Baku, of course, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix is coming up. Last year's podium, kind of a crazy one. Perez, Vettel, Gasly. After, of course, the Verstappen tyre failure in the Hamilton, well, let's say magic brakes situation that went down last time around. Now, well, speaking of Gasly, actually, a big talking point when, well, Perez extended his contract till 2024 with Red Bull was what's going to happen to Gasly. He's expected to be kind of waiting in the wings over an alpha tauri, expecting that spot to become open alongside Verstappen, and of course, it's not going to for at least another couple of years. Now, imagine if you're Gasly, are you thinking at this point, look, maybe it's time just to give up on the idea of going down the Red Bull route, maybe I should try and go down, get in a Mercedes seat or whatever in the future. Who knows what's going to happen on that front? Seems rather unlikely, but of course Hamilton will retire at some point or another. So maybe he's thinking about another option. Of course, there's been talk about McLaren if they don't want him there anymore and Riccardo goes elsewhere or has to retire or whatever the situation might be. Does a seat open up for Gasly over there? Because it does seem like he's frustrated with the AlphaTauri situation, the lack of pace that they have compared to the front runners. And of course, like he's been hoping for that Red Bull spot. It's not going to be there. Perez is going to maintain that seat, as of course it certainly seems like a good idea right now for Red Bull, the way he's been performing the last few races. But of course, well, Helmut Marko says from the Red Bull side, what would the alternative be for Gasly? I don't think there is an alternative for him at the moment that would be significantly better than AlphaTauri, saying, look, you should just stay there, wait your turn effectively, or wait another chance, let's just say, but it might not come. And I'm sure Gasly, look, he's made it clear he wants to be world champion. He's probably not going to do that at AlphaTauri, and it doesn't seem like Red Bull will hold the future for him, so maybe another move could be on the cards. Of course, the fact of the matter is, Daniel Ricciardo for McLaren has failed to score points in 4 consecutive races, the first time that's happened since 2013. Very tough few races for him, and of course, well, will he bounce back in Azerbaijan? That remains to be seen, because it doesn't seem like he's got the hang of the car at all. The gap between him and Norris in quali and in race pace has been pretty massive, actually, compared to the rest of the field. The gaps between a lot of the teammates, that is not flattering Ricciardo at all at the present time. So of course, we'll have to see what the driver lineup looks next year. Speaking of that, actually, Haas were considering, apparently, potential replacements for Mick Schumacher. They have been wondering whether they want to move Schumacher on. I think the rest of the season, most people are expecting. Vettel actually came out and said that, look, Schumacher, don't be so hard on him, it's early days, but look, still, now he's actually got to face a real teammate, not Nikita Mazepin, and show that he's actually a decent driver. Hasn't really done that so far, had a few big crashes, the last few races as well, which hasn't really helped his cause. So apparently Haas might be looking to move him on, but of course the problem is it's Haas Ferrari, right? They, of course, are related to Ferrari, and Ferrari, Mick Schumacher, that's a pretty big deal. So I think the saving grace from it could be, as Formula 24-hour News points out right here, that the Ferrari influence might well keep him in that Haas seat at least for one more season, but potential options of moving him on could be on the cards, right? And the Haas are maybe thinking about that, depending on how the rest of the season goes, of course, with Magnussen in the other seat doing a great job right now. This also thought was kind of interesting from Senna, mentioning the fact that Haas almost left F1 a couple of years ago, as he said there was a possibility the team would close. Gene told me, Gene Haas, if things didn't go the right way, we could close the F1 program. Now it's another story, but I can say Haas will be around for a long time, so that's certainly good news. But the whole 11th Formula 1 team discussion has been a big one the last few days as well. Let's dive into this Mercedes stuff then. Thought this was kind of interesting for George Russell. At least he's out of the Williams, but he says, look, if you'd have told me that 7 races into the season I wouldn't have a victory yet, I'd have been pretty disappointed with that, right? So of course, he has led some laps this season at the Spanish Grand Prix, a track where admittedly that's been a rather good one for Mercedes over the years. Monaco has certainly not been. We kind of saw that in their performance last weekends, but the Spanish Grand Prix has been rather good for them historically, and it seems like this car also likes that track certainly more than Monaco and other ones that they've had so far this season. But of course, look, the upgrades did work for them. The porpoising issues seem to have been reduced dramatically. Didn't really help them in the it seemed like, honestly, that their earlier car at the start of the season, when they did have the porpoising, the old floor they had was better around some of the slower corners than the newer version of the car is, which is going to help them on some circuits, hurt them potentially at other circuits, especially Monaco. But Russell, of course, understandably frustrated with the situation, but then this is what Toto Wolff says on the matter. The gap to Ferrari and Red Bull has remained relatively the same. This is talking about the Monaco gap, right? 5 tenths if we look at it optimistically, pessimistically more like 8 tenths behind. Now at the Spanish Grand Prix, there was only about 3 tenths or so in it a lot of the time between Verstappen and Hamilton effectively, so the gap was certainly closer on that circuit. Other circuits is going to be a little bit further away, but it must be said that the improvement in the porpoising is very evident. This is comparing the frequency of the bouncing effect on the cars to effectively the amplitude of the bouncing. Now interestingly enough, Haas have actually got worse. Their porpoising has got worse, and most teams have been able to reduce it, right? Like we saw at the start of the year, Ferrari especially effectively Mercedes, and Mercedes is now, in terms of amplitude, the lowest on the entire grid. So they've made a massive step here between the start of the season and the present day. Of course, we saw that in Spain. Other teams have also made some steps, with the exception of Alpine slightly, and well, also Haas. Not really sure what's happened over there. But if the car can handle it and they can run it lower to the ground, that might actually be working in their favour. But obviously, look, Mercedes have fixed the car to a degree. Is it going to be quick enough to compete at the top? No. But at the same time, they were kind of delayed in their further upgrades they wanted to make compared to Red Bull and Ferrari by the fact that, well, they had to effectively figure this problem out and solve this problem before they could start the traditional development train that Red Bull and Ferrari, and well, Red Bull mainly really, because Ferrari also had their issues, have been able to do so far this season. So Hamilton, of course, frustrated with not having won a race yet, not having led a lap yet this year. Obviously, it's been a difficult time, not even having led a session right in practice or anything like that. Of course, understandable given the state of the car. But as he says right here, Hamilton said, I hope by the time we get to the British Grand Prix in a couple of races time at Silverstone, we will have the car as we want it to be able to fight with Ferrari and Red Bull. It would be nice if we can give them a run for their money at our home race. I know that work is going on tirelessly in the factory, as he loves to say, to make progress with the car, and I have no doubt we will get it right sooner or later. So he's hoping they'll get it right sooner, for example at Silverstone, or later in 5 or so races time. The fact of the matter is, if they really want to compete for the championship, they're going to have to get it right sooner. They have to be competitive this weekend, next weekend, and some of these tracks coming up soon if they want to have a chance at the championship. They're not actually that far behind. At least George Russell isn't that far off Verstappen. He's only about 40 points behind Verstappen, and that is a gap that can get overturned very quickly, as we saw with Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen after effectively Australia, and what the gap looks like at the present day. It can get overturned if the car is there, and Hamilton, of course, when the car is better, Helmut Marko believes will once again become the force to be reckoned with that he has been for the last, 15 years effectively in Formula 1. Helmut Marko from Red Bull was asked, okay, look, is the title already back home in Milton Keynes with Red Bull? Because, I mean, look, they're looking like the strongest team right now. Ferrari are making mistakes despite having the upper hand the last couple of races. They've thrown away advantages. Of course, well, so did Red Bull at the start of the season. If without those issues, it would be, a more dominant advantage that they, of course, would have at the present time. But he's not saying, look, we've already won it because there's 15 races to go. Nonsense, he says. Even Russell is just 41 points behind Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. Everything is still possible there. Of course, Mercedes seemingly have figured out kind of the solution to the porpoising problems. They can now bring in weight upgrades and some other, things they want to change on the car as well. Marko said it's impossible to write them out of the 2022 story. Their car is getting faster every single day. From the top times, they're already at our level or even better. Which, in fairness, when you compare the Hamilton race pace to the Verstappen race pace, of course, Helmut Marko is going to put it in a perspective that makes it look like, Mercedes are quicker than maybe they actually are. But, in terms of fastest lap times and stuff like this, when Hamilton was on that crazy comeback in Spain, he certainly put in a massive shift and for a time was the fastest drive on the track. Of course, who knows how much Verstappen was leaving in the tank at the end because he had the race sewn up effectively and Hamilton was still fighting. But, of course, if you look at it from that perspective, Mercedes was certainly closer. How much was that due to Spain really favouring their car? Will it be as good as Azerbaijan? Of course, these are the questions that always happen every single year. But as he says, to finish off the job, so you really shouldn't write them off. If Mercedes suddenly dominates everything again, then Hamilton will be back too. So interesting for Helmut Marko to kind of, give some praise, I suppose, to Hamilton, but basically saying, look, when Hamilton's got a good car, when he's confident in the car, when he believes in it, that's when he kind of unlock the best gear of Hamilton. And of course, he's a fair few points right now behind George Russell, many points behind the leader of the championship. But look, if their car overnight becomes the number one car on the grid, then it's certainly possible they still win both championships, right? Although it might be hard to imagine at the present time. But their drive back towards it being a more competitive team from their perspective might well, of course, need to be helped by some reliability issues for other teams. It does seem like right now reliability might well be kind of how this championship is determined. Red Bull have had their issues, Ferrari have had their issues as well, even the likes of Mercedes, right? They've had a few overheating issues and stuff that we saw in Spain, even back in Australia as well. We saw that. And of course, Red Bull, not just their engines and their fuel leak issues that they've kind of had before, but also their DRS problem that Max Verstappen was having, saying that it was self-inflicted. I think if we're honest, so now we've learned rather painful lessons. They say their DRS issues are fixed. Of course, we'll see how that works out. They believed effectively it was a weight-saving venture that, I don't know, they reduced the weight on some of these parts to the point where they didn't actually work as they were intended to work, and therefore maybe they're going to add the weight back or do some sort of change that makes it look like, or at least, from their perspective, the DRS is going to be fixed and working again as it was not in Spain. Because, of course, Max Verstappen was like, look, it was really frustrating, I'm not having the DRS in Spain because if it's not on the car anymore, then we're just driving in a train. I think it demonstrated that it is really frustrating to not have DRS active. Of course, in Max Verstappen's shoes, he was having a tough time getting past Russell as a result of that one. And it might be a similar story in Azerbaijan if, of course, the DRS doesn't work, but theoretically, the Red Bull with their straight line speed that they have should be rather good around this circuit with the absolutely monstrous straight that has. Let's dive into, of course, this weekend just to finish out the video. This is honestly a really big event actually this weekend, is that Fernando Alonso will effectively have the longest Formula 1 career after this weekend. 21 years career of Michael Schumacher. Fernando Alonso, between the time of his first race and his most recent race, is now going to overtake Schumacher with the longest ever Formula 1 career. So rather incredible stuff. Some interesting stats here actually about Baku. Firstly on Verstappen, this is actually one of the only tracks at all that Verstappen has failed to render a podium finish. And well, Baku, his best finish of course was P4. Last year he would have won the thing without the tyre failure that of course he had on his left rear. And well, this is also rather interesting as well. A race of no repeats here from F1 Stats Guru and GP Fans Global. There's actually never been a repeat winner, a back-to-back winner, or even a repeat in general of anything from pole position, wins, or fastest lap. So if you look at the pole positions the last 5 years since the race has been run, it's all different drivers. If we look at the wins, it's all different drivers. Fastest lap, it's all different drivers. So of course this year, in order for that to be the case, Max Verstappen could get pole, Leclerc could win the thing, and then maybe Hamilton gets fastest lap or something, and this kind of train will continue going forward as well. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.